Hello! Hiya! Welcome! My name is Brandy Rose Smith. Welcome to the Forbidden Library. We are live from the... I said my own thing wrong. Haha! Today we played Sonic. Today we will also be reading The Purple Door District by Erin Casey. Hey, look, Raptor Will! Hello! Welcome, welcome. We're starting a new book today. It is an urban fantasy. Did I already say that? Well, I'm saying it again. Urban fantasy. So we've got modern stuff with some fantasy stuff going on. It'll be good. I've actually read this one. I actually ate this one up real fast in my free time. Yes, like Supernatural, like there's werewolves and people who use magic and a sort of masquerade thing going on of like, oh, don't tell the normies kind of thing. Like kind of Harry Potter's the most obvious, almost famous use of a masquerade of don't tell the muggles, don't tell the normies kind of thing. This what to look forward to. The Purple Door District, which I said I have read, so I do know what to expect. We also only have permission to read half of this book. So if you are interested in this book, I'm only giving you half of it. You'll have to buy the rest yourself. Get read half, buy the other. It's like buy one, get one free, but not. read half, buy rest. Anyway, let's get to it. No time like the present. Don't have any. Oh wait, no. I do have one thing to tell you about. You know my terrible AI generated background here? I've actually talked to someone about getting a shiny new one. Someone's drawing me a background. And I am excited. I can't wait to see it. Hopefully we'll have it next week, if not the week after. We'll discover a nice shiny new area in the Forbidden. Exciting. Anyway. For now, book. This book has like a lot of stuff before the actual thing, like a foreword which just tells you about the ideas of the book. Yeah, I got that, don't worry. The acknowledgements, all that stuff. You could read that on your own if you want. I'm not gonna read the foreword acknowledgements. The foreword is a bit more interesting because it's got like, oh, this is how I researched this book and things like that. I tend to prefer things like that at the back. I don't know about you. Don't like hearing about that. But anyway, Purple Door District. See if I can get chapter. Wow. Like to rearranging to get everything in. Slightly bigger title than Exordium. Right. Chapter 1. On the Run. Bianca. Where to, kid? I grunted. Bianca fell back against the taxi's horns with a... I feel like I texted it. I feel like I normally have a little bit more on the box. A little bit bigger than that. Yeah, that's good. Like, I want it big enough that even if someone forgot their glasses and doesn't know how to read very well, we'll be able to read it. But also small enough that we have more than 2 sentences on the screen. Anyway. Bianca fell back against the taxi's worn seats with a bone-weary sigh. The lingering sense of perfume, sweet vodka wafted the compartment, courtesy of the drunken couple stumbling towards the next bar. Bianca sneezed. Achoo! I hated drunk people. She ran her fingers through her tangled hair. She noticed that the driver was watching her from his rearview mirror. His eyes roved up and down, taking her in as though there wasn't much to see. Then again, when did that ever matter to a guy? Gaunt cheeks, tattered clothes, and dark bags that swallowed her green eyes weren't exactly what she would call sexy. But his gaze became less hungrily appraising and more concerned. Where to? He repeated, less gruff this time. Oh, Bianca bit her lip, thinking, wasn't that? It wasn't a simple answer. She tried to breathe him in to see what he was, but the cacophony sense in the taxi made that near impossible. Bianca had trusted the wrong people before, even if he did seem genuine, and the idea of ending up at the end of the hunter's gun almost made her add her own vomit to the list of unpleasants. Well? Purple Door District? The man turned and glared at her with a frown. Never heard of it. Her heart sank. It was probably stupid to assume she'd found another parahuman. Bianca shook her head in frustration and then reached into her pocket and pulled out a 20. Take me as far as this will get me. The man eyed the bill. You in trouble, kid? No. Bianca shook it at him. Look, can you just drive me somewhere or not? The driver started, stared a moment, longer, then turned back around. Oh, that's poop. But that's okay. You have to go to work. With a shrug. Yeah, sure. Buckle up, kid. Bianca struggled into the back seat, trying to ignore the spring poking to her thigh. It didn't matter. Anywhere was better than being out in the cold. The heat hissed as it turned up another notch. Her hands gravitated, drinking in the warmth as it thawed her frozen lips. As her tension ebbed, her eyes started to flutter. Oh, that's good. Nice and chill weekend. Oh, what are you streaming? How many days had passed since she'd slept for more than a few? Most nights she rested in the park, on a bench and sometimes on top of a roof when she performs. One eye always open, shifting for a werebird like her came as easy as breathing, unlike for other parahumans. Light up, oh no. That's a stressful game, isn't it? It's an overcooked stress game. But with an empty belly, it left her feeling weak and helpless. Right now, she couldn't afford to be helpless. Well, I hope you have fun. She reached into her mind and touched her sleepy Karakara. The bird, a reflection of her soul, shuffled around and twitched her dark wings as she got comfortable. Bianca sensed every move, like the way she tucked her beak into her wing and the exhaustion of spending so many nights out in the open, exposed to the elements. No other lichen had such a connection there to an inner animal. She was the bird, and the bird was her. The bond made avians feel special. It made them feel a little less alone. But it had its drawbacks too. When you went from having your bird and another avian's bird in your head, lying, preening, and comforting your soul's connection, to nothing, created this. Sometimes Bianca thought she'd hear the haunting echo of her sister's Karakara in the depths of the night. But then she'd wake up to the ghost alone. She'd cried more tears than she'd cared to count over the repeated heartbreak. Bianca opened her eyes to a watery vision. She scrubbed them stubbornly. Then slipped her fingers into her tattered jacket and pulled out her phone. Suddenly, the bright light made her blink rapidly until she could focus on the screen. 2 warm, beige-skinned Latina women smiled at her in a partial embrace. The picture brought back memory of an art contest Bianca had won a year ago. They wore matching purple necklaces with a silver feather charm, a necklace Bianca still wore. Her sister Nora looked so proud, her green eyes gleaming, her rosy cheeks full of life, her cara keen. Bianca, shaking Bianca to her core and threatening even more. Bianca's stomach twisted and she closed the phone, turning to the sights outside of the taxi window for a distraction. The Chicago skyline gleamed beyond a window rippled with rain. The glow of the street and building lights soothed. She didn't want to fall asleep, but between the light, the warmth, and the soft seat, her eyes fluttered. Ricardo called about a missing avian. Yeah. You have a description of it? Bianca didn't open her eyes as the voice stirred her awake. The car jostled beneath her. Her seatbelt was fastened, and the heat was still on, so she hadn't been moved. The taxi driver spoke quietly, but she had better hearing than most humans. She swallowed hard and hid her trembling hands in her. Uh-huh. That's what I thought. No, Ricardo told me to keep watch out for a kid around this area. He said she was of interest. Said he'd pay good. Uh-huh. He shifted, and Bianca gave a little snore. Yeah, looks like her. Yeah. Okay. Not far from the drop-off point. Look. Don't get blood in my cab this time. Hard to explain that, okay? I'll be there soon. Tell Ricardo he better have the money. What a butthole. Bianca's heart pounded in her chest as she heard the call end. Dear mother, they'd found her again! She thought she'd been careful this time. It had been days since the last encounter, and she'd even travelled to a different state. She swallowed a lump in her throat, every muscle sparking with stress. She'd come this far. She'd refused to let herself be captured by a human taxi driver. Who would running help? Or was it better to fight her way out? Why couldn't she be a were-dog or a were-cat? They were stronger than were-birds. But no, she had wings and not teeth. Yes, she is a were-bird. At least avians had speed. She cracked open an eye. Street lights flickered past, and she could see townhouses and apartment complexes on the side of the road. Shops and eateries were few and far between. Bianca reached slowly towards her seatbelt and clicked it free. She clicked it free, then froze, waiting. But the driver said nothing. He played a quiet song, which would have lulled her back to sleep if her heart hadn't been jackhammering in her chest. The taxi's brakes squeaked as they pulled up to a red light. Bianca counted to 3, then pulled the door handle and shoved it open. Hey! The driver shouted. Bianca fell out of the car in her haste, gashing her knee on the asphalt. The driver slammed his door behind him, but she didn't look back. She scrambled to her feet and darted through the cars, running faster than a human possibly could. Landmarks blurred past her, and the wind whipped her face. She soared through the night sky. She didn't stop running until her legs began to burn with the effort. Bianca slowed near an alleyway, gasping for breath. Rats skittered out of dumpsters and waddled through the rain. Each sent another silent jolt of adrenaline through her. But still, she couldn't bring herself to continue. She sank to her knees, her entire body trembling from exhaustion. If her sister couldn't outrun hunters, what hope did she have? She couldn't even trust a taxi driver. Stop it. She snapped at herself, her Cara squawking in agreement. She wasn't a quitter. Oop. Bianca gripped the rosary-like necklace and ran her thumb over the purple glass bead several times. It helped her draw on the inner strength of both the saints and the blessed. She remembered spending nights memorizing and reciting the prayers alongside Nora, their first communion and their acceptance to the church. It had always brought her comfort, grounded her at the hardest times. Nora wouldn't want her to give up. Bianca rocked back on her heels and looked around. There was no sign of the taxi driver or any of the men that had been following her for weeks. Bianca grabbed the side of a brick wall, pulled herself up. Water dripped from her bloody knee and left a small trail as she headed down the alley. Rain pattered on her head and made the dumpsters smell even more rancid than the cab. As she ran, she searched frantically for a purple door or anything that might signify safety for a parahuman. Nora said I could find one somewhere here. Where is it? And if the men knew she was looking for it, would they surround all of the Purple Door built district buildings? She pressed on, moving through the nearby streets. The shops were all locked up with iron bars or grates over the windows and doors. Some buildings bore broken glass and for sale signs that had lost their colour over long months of waiting for a new tenant. It was not a good part of town. Just her luck. You wouldn't expect hunters to live somewhere good. The minutes and rain ticked and dripped on as she slowed to a walk on her sore feet. Water ate through her shoes and made her blisters ache. By the time she reached the next intersection, she started to limp. Bianca sighed, pulled out her phone. Not for the first time, she typed in Purple Door District in Chicago into the search engine. Nothing of consequence came up until she clicked on the images and saw a picture of a little Airbnb with an iconic purple flower pot hanging directly over the same colour door. When she checked the link, she saw it had been posted by a woman named Gladys, with the letters PDD following her name. Lord, yeah, it's a very vivid description, isn't it? And everyone knows what awful soggy shoes feels like when you've gone out to a forest for a nice hike or something and you've not worn the right shoes and it starts to rain. Oh, bleh, terrible. Bianca couldn't help but hesitate. She smelled a trap. What if the hunters were lying in wait? Do I much of a choice? She wondered. She checked the address and put it in the maps feature. She almost sobbed with relief when she saw it was only a few blocks from where she currently stood. Locking in the location, she started to run. Running soon turned to hobbling. Cars zipped past and splashed her with water, but she didn't care. She watched the little icon on her screen move closer and closer to the Airbnb. 10 minutes. 5 minutes. Bianca looked up and caught sight of the purple flower pot in the distance. A warm light in front of the window beckoned, promising safety and reprieve. Even if the beacon didn't belong to a district savior, hopefully the owner would be willing to let in a bedraggled stranger just for something hit the back of her leg. Cutting through the fabric and skin, Bianca pitched forward with a cry of surprise and collapsed. She smacked hard against the sidewalk, her phone cracking as it struck the corner of the curb. She reached down her calf, whimpering, and fingered a dart in her thigh. She barely felt the pinprick mark over the ache of the poisoning. In Maine. Toxin meant to render aid helpless. I love that. Like, well, we've got wolfsbane. What are we gonna give to burbs? Aha! Hens. We'll name it after one of the least terrifying birds. Her vision blurred. Her leg burned like 100 red ants were burrowing into her veins. She looked over her shoulder and saw 2 men running towards her. The same 2 hunters who had been tracking her for the past 3 weeks. The larger of the 2 was a broad-shouldered white man with a brown beard flecked with frost. His thinner Hispanic companion bore dark hair and eyes as sharp as a raptor, despite being human. No. Bianca groaned. She cast aside the dart and grabbed the light post beside her, grimacing as she pulled herself up and hobbled towards the building. Pain in her leg burned worse, and her vision faded in and out, pulsing black at the edges to the tempo of her heartbeat. Flower pot. Had to reach the purple flower pot. Bianca hit the steps and struggled up to the door. She pounded it with both fists. Please, help! She screamed. She looked back as the hunters closed in. The bearded man pulled his gun out again and aimed at her. The door wrenched. A tall woman with beautiful ebony skin stepped out onto the porch where Bianca huddled. She stood nearly 6 feet tall, her chin raised with pride and strength. The colours of the rainbow swathed her body, her hair pulled up in layers of purple and crimson cloth. Her gaze swept the man with the gun. She held out her hand. She's on my property now, gentlemen. PDD. But the men didn't listen and approached the stairs. We want no trouble, the bearded one said. Oh, you've already got trouble. You have already got trouble. He took another step forward. The woman moved in front of Bianca and raised her hand. A wall of water suddenly sprang up between the hunters and their prey, driving them. Bianca rolled onto her back, watching in wonder as the rain coalesced into a waving, living creature. It arched over them, formed into clawed hands. Water dripped from the fingers like... I won't tell you again, the woman growled. She flexed her fingers, causing the watery apparition to do the same. The bearded man hesitated, but the second trained his gun on Bianca. Like a fool! Like a fool! The woman waved her arm. The watery hand snatched both men in its cold embrace. The fingers closed, squeezing them. The second man's gun clattered to the pavement. She lifted them several feet into the air, winding the water around them till only their eyes and noses were exposed. "You come back to my home, and I'll bring Legion down on both of your heads." With a jerk of her hand, she sent the two men flying across the road. They hit the ground with a painful thud, which could have broken a rib, just as they had done to Bianca not moments ago. Bianca felt no sympathy for them. In fact, she hardly felt anything at all, as the henbane consumed her senses like a hungry beast, and the cold blanketed her body. She looked up at her rescue, slumped down on the porch, her strength fading with each pass. Caught a glimpse of the woman reaching for her, and then darkness descended. Chapter 1 complete. Da-da-da! We'll be going on to Chapter 2. Yeah, I like this. I like it has a good start. I think it's just like, yep, you're in. There's birds. There's people who could turn to birds. There's people who hunt people who aren't normal. There's a lady with magic powers. It's just, you're in. This is what you expect. It's a good start to a book like this, I think. Just drops you in there. Figure it out as you go. Chapter 2, Purple Door District. Bianca stepped through a wooden field filled with barren trees. Sunlight gleamed between splotches of cloud, and the purple haze embraced everything around her. Twigs snapped beneath her footsteps, and she turned her head slowly and glanced around. At first, the area was quiet, but as she walked further, she heard the familiar beat of flapping wings. That prompted her to look up. "Oh, that's fair. Have fun. May you not get too stressed by cooking." Hi! 3 majestic birds circled her. A golden eagle looked down at her and opened its beak in a meaningful. "Yeah, I'm glad you could come too. Thank you." A barn owl, her feathers speckled like a starlit night, swooped beneath him on silent wings, screeched. Behind them, a small ring-necked dove with silver-tinged wings. Bianca could barely make out the little bird's gentle. Bianca thought should have been comforted by being surrounded by fellow avians, but her heart pounded and her hands trembled with a steady chill that spread through her body, warning her of something. A piercing screech startled her. She whirled around as a red-tailed hawk flew towards her, his wings outstretched, the sunlight glinting off his glorious feathers. She could make out every dark bar on his red tail, and the bared talons meant to crush the head of his prey. Bianca twisted around and fell to her knees as the bird zoomed overhead. When she looked up, she saw the hawk crash into a large shadow, reaching out for her. Shadow and bird twisted together in a horrendous display of feathers and darkness. Bianca shouted for the bird to get away, but the shadow consumed him with gnashing fangs. He turned its dark face towards her as Bianca scrambled back. It snatched her up in a clawed hand. Bianca woke with a gasp. She bolted upright, sending something tumbling off her. Images of the birds whirled in her mind, and the shadow, that dark, hideous essence that still reached for her, even though she was awake. She swung her legs over the edge of the couch and staggered to her bare feet. A chill passed through her body. reminiscent of the one in the dream, as a wave of dizziness almost brought the floor to her knees. Oh, to her knees? Her knees to the floor. Fancy with the right. Where was she? She remembered the hunters running through the rain. After that, her memories fizzled, modelling everything in ugly colour. Her damp clothing hugged her body, though she hadn't been out long. Bianca ran her hands over herself, checking for wounds. Scuffed knees and swollen flesh on the back of her leg, where she'd been hit with the dart, were paltry and a victory in her mind. The henbane remained in her system, if her dizziness and confusion were any indications. Maybe the toxin had fueled the dream. But her wrists and ankles weren't bound, so men hadn't succeeded. Or were they just lulled her into a false sense of, "Ah! You're awake!" Bianca spun around with a yelp, a bird echoing her cry of alarm. They started to merge, her nails shifting into vicious talons that could rend her skin. Her pupils dilated, and she became more bird-like, her sharp gaze zeroing on the tall woman standing nearby. The bird yearned to launch out at the intruder, but Bianca held her back in her mind, fearful that once she departed, they'd be separated. That didn't stop her from hissing. The tray tumbled out of the woman's hand, sending teapot cups and saucers and food crashing towards the ground. Oh no! Not the tea! Not the tea! With a flick of her wrists, the woman caught the items in a blue aura. Ha! They levitated in front of Bianca's eyes. Even the liquid tea! The tea has been saved! The tea has been saved! The woman calmly picked the tray back up and used her magic to fill it, placing each piece delicately. She reached for the pot and held it aloft until the last drop of amber tea flowed back inside. "Hello, you too," she said with a half smile. Bianca slowly lowered her hands. Didn't shift back yet. The woman still had a natural weapon after all, but she no longer went on the attack. "Who are you?" "My name's Gladys." She set the tray down on a nearby end table. "I'm the priestess of the Oakfield Ward and the Violet Marshal of the Purple Door District. Well, in this area of Chicago, anyway." "You're a water maggot," Bianca added, remembering the liquid wall that had protected her. "Or do you know how to use multiple powers?" "I do, but I prefer water." Gladys gestured to her, as if encouraging her to respond to the question in kind. Bianca narrowed her eyes, not quite willing to divulge that information. "Those men, are they—" "Gone," the woman replied. She sank down in a creaky chair next to the tea and smoothed out her colourful skirts, making herself look less of a threat. Bianca did. And yet her arms slowly relaxed. The adrenaline started to ooze out of her, replaced by the buzzing pain of the henbane. If the magus wanted to hurt her, he would have done it already. "Thank you. Are you sure they won't cause us trouble?" "They won't get through my door. And if they try, Legion can have them." The adrenaline spiked again like an energy shot. Bianca took a step away from GLaDOS, which It's not GLaDOS. GLaDOS is a murderous robot. GLaDOS is a very nice lady. Let's not get confused here. GLaDOS. I kept doing this while I was reading it by myself as well. My brain would say GLaDOS, but no, there's no O. There's no O. Which turned into a stagger. Being on her feet was not a good idea, but encountering Legion would be the worst. She couldn't bring them into this. They had eyes and ears everywhere. A little too 1984 in her opinion. Cultured. Cultured literature of reference. The woman eyed her. Legion? GLaDOS asked, mistaking Bianca's panic for confusion. The organization that keeps hunters and parahumans in line. I know who they are, Bianca said. They were supposed to be the police of the parahuman world, but Nora had warned to go to them. They weren't safe. If this woman associated with them, Bianca could already be in real trouble. Already in trouble, she thought. You aren't going to call them, are you? The woman offered a concerned look. I should inform them about the hunters running loose in the Purple Door district. I'm a marshal. It's my duty to keep the parahumans safe. Safe? Ha! Bianca laughed dryly. No one's safe with them. Or with hunters lurking in the shadows ready to pounce. She shivered in her damp clothing. Nora had said the district would be safe. She'd never mentioned anything about the marshal being connected with the lead. This was a mistake. I shouldn't be. Bianca limped towards the door. As she moved, light started to sparkle on the edges of her vision. An odd sensation coursed through her body, as if it couldn't quite obey her thoughts. The henbane reared its nasty head, threatening to devour her again. She grabbed the door and yanked it open. Rain had turned to snow and sleet. White powder dotted the grass and sidewalk outside. Falling crystals sparkled like shattered diamonds in the street lights. It would have been beautiful if it hadn't filled Bianca with such dread. It's supposed to get worse out there tonight, GLaDOS said quietly, still nestled in her chair. I'd hate for you to fall ill or freeze. You don't want Legion involved, I won't call them. You're not going to find much better or safe. You're not going to find a much better or safer place than this to spend the night. Bianca glanced over at over her shoulder reluctantly. GLaDOS motioned to a pile of clothing and blanket. I have clean clothes for you. Bianca's arms slumped, and she closed her eyes. A bird shifted restlessly in her head as she thought, "Who am I kidding? I won't survive that. I won't survive out there like this." Bianca shut the door and hobbled to the offered clothing. As she gathered up pink PJs decorated with cats and hearts, she muttered quietly, "Thank you." Bianca didn't know how long she slept, but when she awoke, the dizziness and pain in her leg had both fled. Yay! Painless protagonist. The gentle melody of piano, harp, and guitar roused her from her sleep. She breathed in deeply, her nose catching the scent of floral. Jasmine, maybe? It permeated the room, along with the soothing smell of crackling fire. Soothing smell of fire crackling on wood. She squirmed sleepily in a warm nest of blankets and pillows. Someone had wrapped a thick downy blanket tight around. It smelled comfortingly familiar. A morbid thought since it was probably made from the plucked feathers of a dead bird. Oh yeah, that would be awkward. For a moment, Bianca allowed herself to rest, not fly into action. A bird puffed a quiet sigh as Bianca fiddled with her feathered necklace. She ran the smooth glass beads between her fingers, counting the times they spun. It was the last thing connecting her to Nora, her home. Everything else was probably under police custody or smashed on the streets outside. Shuddered and counted the beads a second. Getting worked up wouldn't help. He had been given a blessing. So she said a silent prayer to the mother, the avian matriarch, thanking her for her reprieve. The threat of the Legion and the hunters still hung in the air, but we could deal with that storm later. Bianca dozed off for another hour or so before her snarling stomach jerked her out of another purple dream. She sat up reluctantly, brushed her hands aloud. Oh, I'm sleepy, everything's sleepy. Oh. She sat up reluctantly, brushing her hands along the fabric of a fire burned merrily nearby. Shadowy flames flickered on the black and beige rug covering the hardwood floor. The dark walls surrounding her bore pictures of dried plants, but also of famous musicians, some of which Bianca were parahumans. How else had Elvis eluded the paparazzi for so long? The king definitely wasn't dead. He was just taking a break. I love it when they do things like that. It's like, oh, here's a factual thing that definitely was supernatural. Gladys had suggested Bianca take an upstairs bedroom, but she'd chosen the receiving room instead. The fireplace provided warmth and comfort and reminded her of the one her father used to stoke on a coal, while her mother sang sweet lullabies. The receiving room also provided a clear exit to the door, if trouble ensued. She swung her legs over and planted on the rug. Ah! Stay down! Gladys said as she walked into the room. She carried a fresh tray of 2 mugs, a teapot, a plate of sandwiches, and those homemade cookies. Bianca's mouth watered in anticipation. That henbei might be out of your system. You still need to rest. Oh, how long ago? Oh no! Oh, I'm getting way too into character. How long have I been asleep? Almost a full day. The magus poured tea into the 2 mugs and handed one to Bianca. To her. Bianca raised her hand to ward it off, but Gladys shook it exasperated. You need to eat and drink, girl. You're off with it away as it is. Actually, where's your bathroom? Understanding dawned on the magus's face. Gladys pointed down the hall. Bianca slipped off the couch and went to do her business. Walking still hurt, but not nearly as bad as before. Even the dull ache in the back of her leg had eased. Bianca nearly ran back to her warm nest, muttering, "Cold, cold, 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 cold," as her bare feet slapped across the wooden floor. Relatable. Very relatable. While she settled on the couch, Gladys handed her the tea and placed a tall glass of water on the table. She half expected the mug to have a floral pattern on it. Instead, the phrase, "I'm a bear in the morning," I'm a bear before morning coffee, you've been warned, was sprawled across it. It made her sympathize. It made her smile. She could sympathize. I can't. I don't like coffee. However, tea. Bianca drained the water, but took the tea slower. She picked up one of the beef sandwiches and took a hearty bite. Spicy Dijon mustard. Bleh, I don't like them. I deal with it. Danced on her tongue and turned her growling stomach into a beast. She threw all decorum out of the window and tore into the dainty sandwiches like a vulture into Carrion? Into a, dead thing. So, Gladys said after a time, you haven't told me your name yet. Bianca brushed crumbs from her lips and hair. She devoured one sandwich with barely a breath and started on her second. Bianca. That was my attempt. I should have actually just eaten something and said it. Full character. I got raisins. I could use them. Nice to meet you. By the talons I saw, I would guess you're Indian. Bianca paused, waiting. But Gladys didn't continue the obvious question of, what kind are you? It was rude in avian culture, so she appreciated the omission. Yes. An unasked question lingered in the air, but it had nothing to do with it. Suddenly her appetite vanished. She put the second sandwich down. Look, I'm sorry about how I acted when you were just trying to help me. It's just hard to know whom to trust. I don't know who those men are or what they want. You've seen them before, then. This isn't just a one-time occurrence. No. Bianca glanced away. She didn't really want to talk about it, but she owed Gladys something for helping her. My sister Nora and I were living together outside of Illinois. She became my guardian after our parents died. Everything was fine. Then these hunters started following us around. I didn't know what they were until one of them tried to grab me on the streets. Nora said if anything happened, I needed to find the Purple Door district. That there would be people there I could trust and who would help me. She gripped the necklace, her thumb brushing over the feather. Well, she was right about that, Gladys replied. So, why'd you come all the way out here? Didn't you live in a Purple Door district? No, Bianca rubbed the back of her. My parents were very selective about where we lived. I know about the district, but I've never actually visited one. My sister just said it was a good place to go. I did come to the right one. Gladys jerked her thumb back towards the door. You were more lucky. And chose a more neutral place. Parahumans set up a motif in their establishment to indicate they're parahuman friendly. You'll get used to it while you're here. How'd you find out about this one? The purple pot and doorway were kind of a dead giveaway, Bianca said with a giggle. And you showed up on a Google search. I did? Gladys asked in genuine surprise. Well, that's lucky for you, but unfortunate for me. That's only supposed to show up on the Legion network. She made a face. I'm sure Randall will have my head for that. You can create water out of nothing, he says. But you can't manage to change a router password or link a web page to the right place. Know-it-all werecat. Bianca stiffened. There it was again, Legion. But if Gladys had called Legion, Bianca would have woken up in some kind of padded and barred cell, not a plush cat. You said you're the marshal. What does that mean? Gladys picked up a cookie and dipped it in her tea. Each district has a violet marshal. That's me. The parahuman leader of the area is the main contact. When there are problems or certain parahumans are seeking refuge. We're the ones who get in touch with you, whom you don't seem to like. She tilted her head back, and her dark hair and colourful scars cushioning her head against the chair. That complicates it for me. Bianca ducked her at the passive reprimand. I'm sorry. I don't have much money. Oh, don't worry about it, Gladys said, waving her hands. She munched on the cookie slowly. This is why we're here. I get some charitable donations to help support the people who stumble in when they're in a bad spot. Guess I'm lucky I ran into a magus. My sister said certain parahumans are always friendly to us birds. She glanced at the tea in her mug and swished it around. I wish I could use... Nora said we have a distant cousin who could set things on fire. One look and poof! Your hair goes up in flames! Gladys choked on her drink a little. Yes, there are a few of those. I dare say, hot-headed Maggie out there. She eyed Bianca. Your cousin... She's not a lichen, is she? Anna, no. Bianca said, shaking her head. Magus married into the family. I thought lichens can't use magic anyway. Well, no, they can't. At least, they're not supposed to. They don't have the ether chakra. What? Gladys smiled. You know about chakras, right? The energies in your body? When Bianca nodded, she went on. The Magi have an extra chakra, which allows us to access the natural magic on Earth called ether. We command it. She waved her hand and created a water orb out of thin air. Bend it to our will. Create. A wiggled finger formed a single wave. We destroy. She clenched her hand and the water vanished. We can sense the ether flowing around us and through us. Witches don't have that chakra, but they still have sensitivity to the ether and have a chance to learn it, use it. Just not as easily. Bianca couldn't help but notice the tone of superiority in Gladys's voice. Witches didn't always get along with Maggie. She knew that much. Witches bonded in groups called groves? Not covens? Not covens! And Maggie formed wards. They were similar to the cloister's avian. What each one did, Bianca didn't know, but she did know that they didn't usually mingle. She watched Gladys form a ring of water, fascinated. If she had that ability, she wouldn't be running from the hunters. Gladys banished the water and leaned forward, suddenly intent. You have no idea what those men were after you, What did your sister do? Worked in a pharmaceutical company. A couple of weeks ago, she told me there was a breakthrough of some kind of drug. And that's when the hunters started following us. Her hands shook around the mug until she set it down. She and Nora had been eating it from their favourite Chinese takeout spot the night it happened. Nothing had been suspicious, and Nora had seemed completely relaxed at the time. And then the door had exploded, spraying them with shards of wood. Smoke filled the room, and the men came in, guns in hand. They killed her, Bianca said in a choked voice, the memory stirring in her. There wasn't anything I could do. Just dead. Tears welled up in her. She hadn't had the chance to really mourn Nora's death yet. Being on the run had made that pretty. And now her phone had been smashed to smithereens. Pictures lost forever. She fought back a sob. And dropped her head into her hands. A bird brushed against her. But it only did so much. Nora was still dead. Gladys touched her and then pulled her into a tight. Let it out, Bianca. Bianca sobbed into the Magus's shoulder, clutched it, and clung to her. Her heart crumbled into a million pieces. It had been bad enough when her parents had died. Now Nora was gone. She had no one left. No family, no cloister, no place to call home. In time, she pulled herself together. She brushed the tears out of her eyes with the backs of her hands. I don't know what to do. You have a cloister you can return to? Bianca shook her head. Nora was my cloister. Without her, I have no one. That's not entirely true, Gladys said and squeezed. You have me as a friend. And I have some friends I can talk to about finding you a safe place where you can be with other werebear. I know I'm not going to be enough. You birds do a lot better with those of your own kind. Not to mention all the preening and pampering you do to each other. I can't keep up with it. But I know a few of them who might be able to lend a wing. Bianca sniffed and looked up. Really? And you won't call Legion? I'll report the suspicious activities of hunters in the area, but I won't tell them about you. I have to keep the rest of my district safe, though. You have to understand. Bianca nodded. It would give her enough time to heal and maybe flee if necessary. Thank you. He's as bad as Nox! He's bad at Nox! Protagonists and their trust issues! Sorry for what's happened, Gladys. But I promise, if you'll give me the time, find someone to take. No more running for you. Bianca heaved a quiet sigh. For a moment, the weight of the world fell away from her. I'd like that. I'm tired of being afraid. If I'm gonna wake up in the morning. Tired of being afraid if I'm gonna. That's something you won't have to worry about here. Gladys squeezed her shoulder. We parahumans have to look out for each other. Rest, Bianca. You're safe. GLaDOS best mom. Sleep eluded her. Maybe she'd slept too much during the last 24 hours. Or perhaps it was because birds and shadows kept dancing in her dreams. Bianca pushed herself off the couch around midnight. The fire burned low, and Gladys had gone to bed hours ago. Bianca headed to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. As she downed it, she noticed a notebook and a pen with a grocery list sitting by the fridge. Put the glass in the sink, picked up the book. House creaked and groaned its age as she walked through the long hall. She hadn't explored much else except the first floor. You mean the ground floor, don't you? The stairs wound as they went upward. The walls lined with more pictures of musicians, and some people who looked like Gladys. One woman even wore the same colourful cloth in her hair as the Magus. Bianca checked the rooms. They were set up like a nice hostel, with clean beds, linens and furniture. One room had an odd Victorian motif, complete with canopied bed, rustic wooden furniture. The only door she couldn't open emitted Gladys's quiet. Bianca hid a smile and glanced at the glass door that led out to a small patio. Moonlight stretched across the floor, landing just shy of her toes. She settled down again, placing the pad on her knees. She used the moon to help her sketch images of the barn owl, the red-tailed hawk, the golden eagle, and the ring-necked dove. Returned to her in a flourish. She sketched even the individual feathers. They almost looked like they could jump off the page and soar with her across the night sky. But then another image started to form on the pad. The furrow furrowed her brow and sketched the dark shadow which had loomed over her in her dream. It rose, vicious tendrils reaching the birds. For her, Bianca dropped the pad onto the floor. The image of the figure filled her with the same terror she'd felt the night Norma died. The night her connection to her cloister. It's not fair, I thought. I didn't ask for this. Neither did Nora. It wasn't like we went out looking for trouble. But trouble liked to find her. Sometimes she wondered if anyone was safe around her. As she blinked back the tears, her Kara took shape beside the drawing of the shadow figure. No one else except Bianca would be able to see her, but it made her feel just a little less alone. The bird nibbled at her fingers affectionately. Bianca stroked her head back, the warm feathers tickling her. The Kara was a limb, one she didn't ever bet. Something flew across the moon, cast shadow over her picture. Bianca swallowed and glanced outside. Suddenly, Gladys's promise of protection didn't feel so tempting. Guacamole grill! Welcome to the guacamole grill. It's all so serious, and then suddenly we have a chapter called the guacamole grill. Yeah, much mystery. And again, I like that we started to drip feed a bit more of this world. Okay, this is what Magus are. This is how some of the birds work, and slowly getting more info about the world. And the fact that Gladys is just generally amazing person. Yeah, a good person. And I mentioned my chocolate raisins during that chapter, and I would like some. My bottle might while I reach for Come here, raisins. There we go. Yay, chocolate. Raisins, chocolate covered raisins. Yeah. Tastes like childhood. Or these taste like mine, specifically. Okay. Nom nom nom. Chapter 3. We're going to a different character, and his name is Carlos. Let's see what Carlos is up to. Chapter 3. The Guacamole Grill. Orders up! Carlos slid 2 sizzling fajita dishes across the bar to his waitress Anita. He reached for a basket of chips at the pass and spotted his chef's orange head bouncing up and down like a dancing pumpkin. The younger Latino whistled and tossed another steak on the grill. Instead of turning up the heat, he flicked his fingers together and set the meat aflame with magical fire. Ooh, I wonder what magical fire grilled steak. He flashed Carlos a wide smile, his harvest eyes sparkling. A Fey chef definitely cut down on the gas bills. Oh, I need that at the moment. Carlos said that. I'm sorry, it took me 2 minutes to realize they meant crisps. They meant like nachos, I think, when they say chips, because Americanism. I was like, chips, potatoes. But no, yeah, sorry, it took me a minute. I just had that slap in the face realization of, oh, they don't mean chips. Anyway, yeah. Carlos set the chips down in front of a werewolf sitting at the bar when he noticed Anita lingering with the fajitas still in her hands. He cocked his head at his knee. Anita sighed. Table 5 is giving me problems again. I don't like being served by a chick. Carlos arched a grey eyebrow and glanced at the indicated booth. 2 broad-shouldered white men roared with boisterous laughter and gulped down their beers almost in tandem. A lithy woman sitting across from them cracked a wide smile. She ran her foot along one of the men's legs. He looked her up and down hungrily. The whole scene would have seemed normal had the third man in the booth not hunkered down as if he was the last place he wanted to be. Oh, newbie. Carlos grunted and moved around the bar. Pick my spot. I'll have one. Don't rough them up too much, Anita said, touching his arm affectionately. You don't want another scene. They tried to touch you. Believe me, there'll be more than a scene. He cleaned his hands off on the red napkin, hanging from his pants, and strode over. Though not the biggest man, or the strongest, his experience outweighed both. Most werebirds didn't seek out fights, and Carlos was no exception. However, he didn't sit idly by while another avian, or chick, was being abused. Besides, he was the owner of the Guacamole Grill! And if he wanted to kick a few morons out, then he would. As he drew closer, he recognized the woman. He fought back a groan. Ugh, Trish, nice to see you again, he said, his voice dripping false pleasantry. The woman turned her smouldering red eyes towards him. Her crimson lips widened and showed off pristine white fangs, which were even brighter than his chef's hair. Ah, Carlos, she purred. So good to see you. Sorry. Are we being too loud? Carlos's eyes darted to the man squirming at her side, then the frat boy-like pair. A sniff told him what his eyes couldn't. Werewolves. Lovely. Werewolf tempers. Just what he needed. Nah, the volume isn't the issue. I hear you're giving my server a bit of grief, though. The 2 werewolves snickered to one another. Trish sighed dramatically. Carlos, they were just having a bit of fun, that's all. We didn't know little bird was so sensitive. Ugh, the worst. She smirked at the wall. Really, don't let us ruffle your feathers. Carlos rolled his eyes to the ceiling, praying for patience. He jerked his thumb towards the purple door at the front of the building. You see that? You remember what it means? It also means that this area, he ran his finger in a circle, is to be clear of dickish, racist comments, especially when they're directed at the owner's niece. Trish pouted, her lower lip sticking out. Oh dear, we seem to have upset him. She snapped her head towards one of the werewolves. Jeff, say you're sorry. The werewolf barked out a laugh. You want me to apologize to an avian? Might as well cut my own tail off. It was a joke. Lay off, hermano. Carlo's hand snapped out and squeezed a nerve on the werewolf's neck. Two sharp talons slid through the skin on his finger and pricked the wolf. He breathed patiently as the man froze, feeling the tight hold. The other werewolf grew still, but Trish could only smile. I am not, nor willing to ever be your brother, until you show me the kind of show me and my kind proper respect. You can both leave. Don't make me call the Violet Marshal down on your asses. Jeff swallowed, his Adam's apple bouncing nervously. I'll tell her you threatened me. I'm protecting my establishment and the fine people here, Carlos said with a charming smile. You are disturbing the peace and also trying my patience. Now, do I have to call the VM? He tightened his hold until the wolf flinched and shook his head. Jeff, Trish said, be a dear and run along. I fear we've overstayed our welcome. Carlos stood back as the two wolves tossed a few wrinkled bills down on the table and left. I mean, the fact that they still tried to pay for it is nice. This is America, it probably wasn't enough to cover it and the tip, but hey ho. Better than a kick in the teeth. Jeff paused long enough to give Trish a disgustingly long kiss, blah, tongue and all, before he parted ways. Carlos didn't relax until the door swung shut behind two dogs. Trish leaned back. Was that really necessary? How long have you had them under your charm, Trish? Carlos grumbled. He swiped up the money and glanced at the thin man beside her. This one under your control too? Of course not. Ramon was dying to come here. See, he's heard all about the Purple Door District, and he was always too afraid, you know, being a human and all. Now that sparked Carlos's interest and ire. Human. Trish, did you really bring one of your blood bags into my restaurant? He glowered. You know how I feel about feeding. It's perfectly natural, Trish said defensively. I need blood to survive. He has blood to give. I make sure I don't take too much. I wipe his memories anyway, though he won't remember me or this place. It's a shame when you... What? Tipped Ramon's head back with her nail on his chin. Isn't that right, precious? The man's eyes widened in fear, but Ramon didn't resist. Likely Trish had used her charm on him already. She liked the fear. It got the blood pumping and made it taste better, she often said. And she preferred to instill terror, while her prey perched next to her like a bloody steak on a silver platter, instead of having to chase him. I don't like fast food, she'd once laughed. Carlos set his jaw and folded his arms. Trish, let him go. I don't like having charmed folks in my restaurant, especially not when they're being fed on. I haven't bitten him. Carlos motioned the two very red dots on the map. Bitten healed? Bitten healed? Not stupid, Trish. Either let him go or get out. Trish narrowed her eyes at him. She leaned forward slowly, her brown and uninspiring irises taking on a redder tint. Make me bird. I'll get for discriminating vampire. My coven will hear about it. Oh, that's why they didn't use coven for witches, because they're using coven for vampires. That makes sense. And won't listen because they know how you are, Carlos retorted. Half of the reason this bar doesn't have vampires is because they know you frequent it. They know my rules. They respect them. I've been lenient with you before, Trish. Bringing in a charmed human is a step too far. He drummed his fingers on the table, the long talons and Trish snorted at him. You avians might be faster, but I'm still stronger than you, Carlos. You attack me, A female voice interrupted her. You'll what? Exactly? Trish's head snapped around and Carlos looked up. A dark-skinned woman wearing purple, gold and crimson joined them. She towered over Carl. Well, almost everyone did, and she wore her natural black hair with a thick purple ribbon. Rich-coloured clothing acted as her colour. People could spot her blocks away. It gave parahumans who knew not to mess with Gladys Gladys Bamore, the chance to escape. That's how you know how badass she is. She's so badass she wears a warning sign. Do not fuck with her. Trish's pale skin flushed with colour. You called the VM on me? She hissed. Did I need to be called? Goddess asked. Carlos smirked to himself. In all his years working at the Guacamole Grill and living in the Purple Door district, Gladys had always been a friend to him, and his family. She'd gotten rid of more than a few bad eggs from his restaurant. She'd tried throwing Trish out before, and Carlos had taken pity on her. At that time, she'd been a weak, scared vampire, covenless and alone. Having a coven had made her bold and stupid, as well as forgetful of those who had helped her during her struggles. Carlos could only offer so many chances. Trish growled under her breath and grabbed her purse. She reached for the man's wrist, but Gladys placed her hand on the booth next to Go. Gladys said, take the charm off, Trish. You're not bringing this one with you. He's mine! Trish shoved Gladys's hand away. I think I said GLaDOS again. Gladys's hand away and stood up, almost reaching the Megus's height in her heels. But Carlos would still put his money on Gladys. Trish might have fangs and charm, but Gladys could drop like Michigans on Trish's head if she wanted. Gladys closed in on Trish, but she didn't meet her. It wasn't out of fear or respect. You're an idiot if you stared directly into a vampire's gaze. That's how you got wrapped up in their web. I'm only going one more time, Trish. You know who I can call. Trish hissed under her breath. Slowly, she uncurled her fingers around flesh and timber. Fine. Roused and tried to swing past Gladys. But the Magus didn't move. Gladys gave her a look. The vampire whirled around and grabbed the human chin. He gazed into his eyes and spoke quietly. I've grown tired of you. Go home. With that, she jerked her hand away, stormed out of the restaurant. A few patrons let her go. The moment the door shut behind her, several parahumans applauded! Woo! Carlos thought he heard a relieved, finally, off to the corner. He didn't have qualms with vampires. Just Trish. He glanced at the human. The poor fellow looked dazed, as if he'd been punched in the face. Carlos slid into the booth next to him and gave his shoulders a shake. How are you feeling? What happened? The man mumbled. He put a hand to his head, made a pained face. Sitting close, Carlos could see that Trish had been pale. Several marks decorated his throat, which she hadn't taken care to clean up. Vampire saliva had a healing component to it. What use was a reusable blood bag if it bled out once Trish fed it? If it bled out once Trish fed. But she had chosen not to do much more than seal the wound. He'd marked him, and pretty heavily. Most female vampires left what looked like a lover's mark on their prey's neck. This poor man looked rather like an animal had gnawed on him. His ashen skin suggested borderline anemia, blood bag running on empty. Gladys took a seat across from him and reached over the table, taking the man's frail hands in hers. Carlos didn't see the magic, but it hummed as it passed through Ramon's body. The man's eyes cleared a little, and he ran. Healing magic. Carlos would give anything to have that ability. Gladys offered the human a... What's your name? Ramon? He looked confused. Where am I? Carlos held out his hand. The guacamole grill! Looks like you could use a good meal. Let me get something for you. You know, where you live? Ramon blinked a few times and seemed to come out of his trance. Gladys sent him another wave of healing magic. Yeah. I'm not sure how I got here though. I was coming out from work and then everything's kind of hazy there. Gladys smiled. Don't worry. I'll help you get home, but Carlos is right. You should eat something. I'll sit with you, okay? She glanced sideways at Carlos. Like a word with you later, when you have a moment. Shift ends at 6, he said. Carlos slipped from the table, long enough to fetch the fajita order that the werewolves had requested. No use in wasting good food. The plate was still warm, so he brought it and a couple of tall glasses of water. Once he served the man, he slipped back behind the counter as Anita poured a drink for one of the customers. She sent him a smile. At least she won't be back again, he remarked. I don't think she will be, Oz replied. He looked over at Ramon as the human dug hungrily into the fajitas. Gladys spoke with him and touched his hand every so often to help with the charm fog. He'd be fine. He was in good hands. Not all blood bags were so lucky. All right, Carlos said to Anita as he waved to his final customers. Lock's up for me. If I'm late for dinner tonight, Haley is going to have my head. Anita chuckled and whacked him on his rump with her cleaning rag. Go, I have it here. I'll stop by later and check on the kids, eh? She caught his shoulder before he left. Keep an eye out for Trish, okay? I don't want her causing you trouble. Carlos leaned over to kiss her cheek. You worry too much. They definitely got the whole, like, birds being incredibly affectionate thing going on here, because this is so much physical affection for what I would, for like, uncle and niece to me. Maybe that's just me. Don't worry too much, I'll be fine. Besides, I have the big bad VM here to give me a hand if Trish seeks out revenge. He stretched out his arm to Gladys as she approached him, Ramon cowering slightly behind her. Isn't that right? You'll protect me from the mean vampire. Gladys snorted. I think your talons will do well enough. Still, I'll walk you to your car. She jerked her thumb towards Ramon. I'm going to get him home and put on a protection spell to make sure Trish stays off him. Off of him. You wanted to talk? Carlos slid his arm through his leather jacket and pulled his keys and wallet. Pulled out his keys and wallet and headed for the door, holding it open for both her and Ramon. In a moment. Gladys guided the men to the 2 rows of cars outside the restaurant, her little gold Honda, her attire perfectly. She helped Ramon inside and touched his head, sending him to a sleep spell. Yet another thing Carl could do. He leaned against the bumper of her car. Will he remember what happened? Gladys shrugged. The restaurant? Yes. Trish? No. We don't need Hoomies running around yelling about vampires abducting them on their way home from work. She put her hands on her hips. I was wondering if your cloister could take another bird. Carlos lifted an eyebrow. Well, she wasn't beating the bush, was she? Been a while since you brought in a stray. Explain. She came to me, Gladys said, a couple of nights ago. This avian showed up on my doorstep, being followed by 2 hunters. She's just a kid, barely 18. I chased them off, but I've sent some lurking around. Thought it would be better to get her deeper in the Purple Door district while I consult with some. You have the room? Paula smiled a little. You know I always find room for avians around here. Family is getting big, but we still have space. What's she like? Scared, Gladys replied. She's got a good sense of when you get her relaxed, but that's hard to do. Hollis nodded to him. He knew he should talk it over with his wife, but for now, the kid needed help. Turning stray birds away wasn't in his nature. Of all parahumans, werebirds were most likely to perish from loneliness. And he didn't trust some of the other fathers and mothers of the cloisters in the area. It wasn't that they were bad, they just had some tradition he didn't follow. And besides, they could always find her another place later on. Why don't you bring her over my house later tonight? I'll have an extra plate of dessert for her. Haley's making tres leches? Tres leches? Would that be a peachy thing? Because I think leches is peach, right? My minimal Spanish. Save me a piece, Gladys said. That'll be a good introduction for the girl. Carlos cocked his head. She's not dangerous at all, is she? I don't think so. She got a bit defensive when she woke up at my place, but calmed down once she realized she was safe. She's stayed huddled in one spot the past few days. She's drawing, but she doesn't seem to have an interest in anything else. I think she just wants to find a home. Her name is Bianca. Pretty, Carlos remarked. He patted Gladys on the arm. Well, go get him home and bring this Bianca to me. I'll be happy to meet her. Are you sure Haley won't mind? I'll talk to her, Carlos assured her. Thanks, Carlos. Gladys squeezed Carlos's shoulder and opened the driver's door. Carlos backed off as she got inside. He stared at Ramon for a moment, but the man remained bleak. Sometimes magic really had its perks. He could have used a sleeping spell when the kids were young. He waved as he pulled out of the parking lot. Something clattered near the back of the restaurant. Carlos snapped his head towards the noise, and his eyes narrowed. He moved between the cars swiftly, expecting a raccoon or someone dumpster diving. But when he got there, a large shadow disappeared around the corner of the building. Carlos sniffed the air, catching a familiar whiff. Vampire. Trish, he thought to himself. He clenched his teeth, grabbed his bloody vampires. Didn't know when to leave well enough alone. As he headed towards his Subaru, he couldn't help but glance. Oh, give me a big stretch 1 second. I'm a little sleepy now. But that was chapter 3. So next time we're going to be on chapter 4. But I think that's where I'm leaving it for today. Bubble Doll District is fun. I like the drip feed of plot. I like that when we get to Carlos, it starts to open up more. We actually see a bit more, not just get told a bit more. And there's lots to explore, lots to know, lots to do. I'm excited to read more, which we will read next Sunday. We will read more. Put these raisins here. Okay, cool. Right, I'm back. Yes. So as I said, we only got permission for 50% of this book, so we will be reading until that percentage says 50%. Or at least until, like, the end of the chapter where it says 50%. I'm not going to leave it in the middle of the chapter. I'm not that cruel. I say, but it could be a horrible cliffhanger. I don't know. I've read it before, but I can't pinpoint where that middle point would be. So that'll be fun in itself. But yes. I will not be streaming tomorrow. I decided I'm not because I'm tired, because I streamed twice today like an idiot. Because I couldn't not, because I had loads of free time to play Sonic and I really wanted to play Sonic, okay? But yeah, I would like to play Sonic, but I don't want to stream, so I'm just going to take a break. But I have some extra. Anyway, Sonic Gorillas will still be a thing, but I only have 2 actual scheduled streams next week, which is going to be Pokemon on Tuesday and more Purple Door District on Sunday. Yes. And then Sonic. As I said. Oh, I'm sleepy. Talking a lot. I'm gonna go. This has been Brownie Rose Smith live from the Forbidden Library. I hope you enjoyed the. If you want to buy this book, Purple Door District, there is a link in the description. Go buy things. Hashtag not an ad, but hashtag good book should buy. I will see you probably Tuesday. I had fun. Hope you had fun. This has been Brownie Rose Smith live from the Forbidden Library. Goodbye.